Khalaf Haddad is the CEO of New Horizons Toronto. Khalaf Haddad has been active in the technical training industry since 1992. An instructor at heart, Khalaf has helped thousands of students across several continents acquire practical skills that made an immediate impact on their careers. Having written two courses for different software vendors, Khalaf is now committed to partnering with companies and individuals to provide world-class professional development solutions in the Greater Toronto Area and throughout North America. As a reminder to all of our attendees, this conference is being recorded. We will have question and answer at the end of the presentation. Please use the question and answer tool if you have a question for the speaker. The stage is all yours, Khalaf. You can now share your content and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Khalaf Haddad, and I am the CEO of New Horizons Toronto. Our mission is to empower people around the world to succeed through learning. And over the past 40 years, our network of locally owned offices across 6 continents has provided skills training to tens of thousands of people each year. As the world's largest independent training group, we provide a guaranteed to run schedule of hundreds of events every week. And yes, we do mean guaranteed to run, because over the years, I personally have taught classes with exactly one student. Well, getting back to the matter at hand, thinking about the challenges that we have faced over the past year, and they have been profound. When we think about this once-in-a-century pandemic that's caused companies and organizations to revisit what is normal and rethink their business models and even modify their operating systems to accommodate remote workforces, and the effect that that's had on corporate culture, things have changed in ways that we didn't expect, and we find ourselves on the other side of this, looking to a future where we'd like to re-engage a lot of the activities we were routinely doing 2-3 years ago, but are looking for a new way to do it. And as the economy returns to that fully operational state, that desire to return to a pre-pandemic normal is going to run headfirst into that reality that the world is a different place. And those who doubted the efficacy of remote work were forced to embrace it. And we have to accept that this genie will not go back in the bottle. The new ways of doing things will clash with the yearning for the good old days. Now, one area that companies and organizations are eager to get back to is the area of staff development. Interestingly enough, in 2009, the last time the market had a large corrective event, we saw that the market size of the workplace training industry fell by about 17%. That would be a drop attributable to the 2008 financial crisis. Over the ensuing 10-11 years, the market size of the workplace training industry grew by 50%. And that means that people wanted to get back to staff development, professional development, employee training. But sure enough, as we would expect, last year there was a fall off, but surprisingly, it was only by 3%. And a part of that was companies and organizations that had already started moving to embrace the remote workforce. At New Horizons, we've been delivering online live instructor-led training for about 20 years now. We pioneered that back in 2001. And so that helped mitigate the dip. Now, as we see this previous pattern of recovering after a major corrective event in the marketplace, we anticipate that over the next 5 years, we'll see a 20 to 25% increase in spending in the area of staff development. So think about your own organizations and consider the discretionary spending that has been cut over the past 18 months. It's kind of like the travel expense. We've been cutting back on travel, and travel experts are telling us now that after the pandemic eases, we're going to see this burst in what they call revenge travel, where we get back at the virus by touring the world. And I think we're going to see a similar thing here in the training arena. With the economy beginning to bounce back and money flowing through the marketplace, training budgets are being replenished and reviewed for upcoming staff development, which is going to lead to the natural question: how do we maximize the value for our training spend? And to answer this, we have to look at 3 key questions. First of all, what is value? And second, what factors affect value? And finally, how do we determine the best value. So let's begin with the idea of value. Value can be described as the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. So in the area of staff development, the idea of value is realized when, as the training is purchased, it creates an increase in productivity or efficacy on the part of those who complete the training. It may be difficult to quantify, but let's set forth a simple example by way of illustration. Suppose a data scientist is tasked with the processing and reporting on a large volume of data. Now, consider the tools that might be available to her. If the only tool available to this data scientist were a desktop calculator, it could take a while. Now, granted, that is a little bit extreme, but let's step up. Suppose that same data scientist were to use a better tool like Microsoft Excel. Clearly, Excel provides a wealth of features not available on the handheld calculator. But does the data scientist know how to use those features? Well, I would hope so. But what about all the features? But what about other tools? Are there tools better than Excel? Well, what about things like Python, R programming language, SQL Server, Power BI? The more of these tools the data scientist can use, the faster the tasks can be performed and the better results she can produce. So in this illustration, we recognize that by spending money on training, the data scientist, she'll be in a position to better use the tools, thus costing the company or the organization less of that person's time. So whether it's data science or project management or business analysis, the idea is the same. And this leads to the next question: what factors affect value? Well, when we look at the different ways in which training can be delivered, we refer to those as training modalities. And in the training world, you've run into these, whether they are what we call synchronous or asynchronous events. And you can think of synchronous training as happening with a facilitator and the learners gathered at the same time, interacting with each other in a live format. The synchronous, we're going through it together. Now, traditionally, we've done this for centuries. We have learned together. There would be an expert or a leader at the front sharing or disseminating information with the learners that are gathered, and collaboratively, a learning experience takes place. Now, whether that's physically in the same place or today with web conferencing tools such as Zoom or Microsoft Teams, we can still achieve that. So the synchronous on the one end, then there's the asynchronous on the other. And asynchronous training can either be facilitated or learner-driven. And some of you may have experience with this facilitated asynchronous training. In fact, when I completed my MBA program, it was a facilitated asynchronous program where the instructor set forth the syllabus, laid out the assignments, and the requirements for the course. And as learners, we were to engage with the material. We purchased the textbooks, we read them, we read the articles on reserve, and then we wrote up responses or positions and posted those, and we interacted with each other's posts through threads, and that's how the discussion took place. So whether people would be available in the afternoon or a midweek evening, or because of the power of the internet, even in different time zones, coming in at my 2 o'clock in the morning to make comments, it was still a highly interactive experience. But then there are also asynchronous training types where it's learner driven, which allows the learner to determine what to learn and when. And you see this in short format learnings such as computer-based training like a LinkedIn Learning or the like. So as we look at the pros and cons of each of these, it'd be good to consider the following 5 areas: the cost, the coaching, the collaboration, the clock, and the hands-on experience. I know it's supposed to be the 5 C's, but I came up with 4 C's and an H to make it just a little bit more memorable for you. And so taking a look at these, first of all, as you can imagine, the cost involved. The cost to the learner or the organization desiring the learning is going to be higher for a synchronous event. There is the requirement of a fixed time and place that has to be considered. Now, The rest being equal, the things such as labs and courseware and the material, that is pretty much the same across. But in terms of the facilitator and the facilitation method, that's going to be what drives the cost. But that also then goes into the second C, which is the coaching. What type of interaction does the learner have with an expert in the field? With synchronous learning, the expert is immediately present, and that produces great value. In a live event, the expert can interact and engage with the questions. The learners can engage with one another and share experiences, and it provides for a much richer, much robust, much more focused experience. When we talk about a facilitated asynchronous learning, which in our world we refer to as mentored learning, that is self-directed study, but an instructor or an expert is available for office hours for questions that may come up. Meanwhile, at the far end of the scale there, with the online anytime product, that's just the learner signing in. It's kind of like going to the gym. There are a few people that get the most out of their gym membership, but most of them sign up and the enthusiasm wanes after a few weeks or months. So with that in mind, taking a look at the third C, which is collaboration. And as I've already alluded to, in a synchronous event, we get the highest degree of engagement, the highest degree of collaboration between the subject matter expert and the peer learners. And the conversations that ensue enrich the overall experience. And it's a tremendous value that's not available in other modalities. To a degree, with the facilitated asynchronous or the mentored learning, there is some of that to a degree, but not with the breadth, not the opportunity to network, and not in that same real-time engagement. Meanwhile, the learner-driven computer-based training, if you need help, it's a web search, and that there presents its own problems and challenges. As we start to dig deeper into the value, we can see that it really is a get what you pay for proposition. But it's not just the dollar amount that goes into it. There's also the matter of time. You see, in order to acquire skill or knowledge, I have to trade resources of both money and time. And time is the more precious of the two. And what I've seen repeatedly in my 30 years in the field here is that when a learner takes the training event seriously, they will be willing to block that time and focus it on the learning event. There have been too many learners that have come through my classroom that have had to both manage their day job and listen in on class, or monitor email and attend class, and that's difficult. But for those that can embrace the time block and say, these 3 days or these 5 days or this one day, I am out of office, inaccessible, focused on the learning, they're the ones that realize the greatest return on the investment of their time. With mentored learning, there is still a schedule with the office hours posted by the instructor, so there is a measure of accountability to time, but the onus is placed on the learner to push themselves to it. And for some people, that is a good solution. That's something that works with them. But when you put somebody onto an on-demand CBT product, too many distractions come up. They hit the play button to go through a lesson, and 15 minutes later, a phone call comes in or an email distracts, and the value of the lesson is lost. And then they have to go back and repeat it again, and repeat it a third time. Not only are they missing on that time, but also the delay in time for receiving the training that will increase the productivity. And therein lies the challenge with computer-based training. Another one is that with computer-based training is that the moment it's published, it begins to become obsolete. Whereas with your synchronous events or your facilitator-led events, the facilitator or the subject matter expert can always bring a measure of currency to the learning experience. So if something has been updated since the course has been published, the subject matter experts would be able to bring it into the room. And finally, we get to that H there, the hands-on experience. Now, all of these modalities provide for a means for the learner to engage with the concepts or the topics or the technologies in some kind of a lab. And whether that is these full immersive labs that are part of the robust instructor-led experience, or the labs that are provided through facilitated mentored learning. Those are the richer labs. Generally, the on-demand product expects you to have the product installed and or your own lab environment built, which may not be up to the specifications required of the course. And so when we look at the value, the proposition, how do we begin to extract the best value? And the answer is, there really is no one solution. There's no one size fits all solution. I can't simply tell you, yes, go with mentored learning and it'll be wonderful for all your employees, because the fact of the matter is it won't. That's not how most people learn. When we think about how we have learned over the years, think back to all of your schooling and all of your other learning experiences. There has been a mentor present. There has been a subject matter expert present. There have been fellow learners, and it's the fellow learners that more greatly enrich the experience. Now, that's not to say there is no place for CBT, but computer-based training is really more of a supplemental as opposed to a primary. It's a good follow-up after we've had that more robust conversation. And study after study bears this out. And so the questions to ask and thinking about where do we go from here? We want to find some sort of a led experience that shepherded by a knowledgeable coach to create that collaborative environment where learners can support each other. We want something like hands-on labs, things such as those that are provided by XtremeLabs, a robust lab environment that creates a controlled environment to ensure that the lessons can be taught without distraction. And the lessons can be repeated over and over until they are properly and completely taken in by the learner. Now, reality tells us that our training budgets are limited. And so when we work with a trusted advisor who understands all of these modalities, he can help us to structure solutions that find the best blend for a given organization. And so some of the questions I want to leave you when you look to spending your training dollars in the upcoming year, think about some of these things, such as, what are the most pressing training needs in my organization? And I want you to look at them from two standpoints. Look at it, first of all, in the skills gap. Things have changed. What skills are missing in the organization? For many, it's management of a remote workforce. So there are soft skills for managing a remote workforce. There's the technology involved in managing a remote workforce. Technology such as Microsoft Teams or Citrix, virtual apps and desktops, some of the other remote access tools and the like. The second area that you want to consider is not just the skills gap, but also the people that you have. Can these people be given these additional skills to close the gap? Or do these people need skills to further enhance their careers? Maybe we need to bring some other people in. But those are the two things that we would want to start looking at. What are the needs of the organization from a skills gap point of view? And then what do our people need in order to continue to grow? We want to maintain a motivated workforce. And that is super important. As has been famously quoted and perhaps attributed to Zig Ziglar, might be somebody else, but the saying goes, if you think training employees and watching them leave is expensive, think about not training them and having them stay. All right. Another area of questions to ask as you start to investigate, what time constraints are you under? Because more time is, they say time is money, but really time is more valuable than money. We can always get more money to flow in, but we can't get the time to flow in. And so how much time is going to be involved in acquiring the skills? Is it a 1-day program, a 3-day program, 5-day program? Does it span multiple weeks? And then how can I create staffing solutions to cover for my people? Maybe it's something like an Excel class where I need maybe to take 12 to 15 people and just sit them in an Excel class for a day, and we can create a 1-day event for that. Maybe we're in a smaller environment and we want to spread that out across the calendar. That can, there are solutions out there. But going back to the issue of money, what if I recognize that the needs are great, but the training dollars are low, or our market segment has still not picked back up after the pandemic? Well, there are programs out there, things like grants that are available. Up in Toronto, there are programs like the Canada-Ontario Job Grant, which help companies subsidize the training events for their current employees so that they can improve their skill set to create a gap for entry-level workers to come in. That's a really neat program that's available in the province of Ontario and in fact across Canada. So there's grants. There are vendor programs. If you have a large software contract with a vendor like Microsoft or Cisco or Citrix or VMware, they often, as part of your licensing agreement, will include some dollars towards training. Find out what those are and add that to the conversation. And finally, think about things like volume discounts. If you have a group of people, maybe getting a group class is going to be more cost effective than sending each person individually to class. But hopefully, with that understanding of the training world, the different modalities that we have, and the different styles, the different costs, you connect with a trusted advisor who can help guide you through those conversations and make the most of a really unique opportunity as the workplace comes back to life, that we get people skilled up as quickly as possible. And for those in verticals that are still recovering, use that downtime, because remember, you will not get this time back, but the money will come eventually. So use this time now to get your sales force, not your sales force, but your staffing ready for the big demand that is on its way in. I hope this has been helpful, and at this point in time, thank you for your attention.